It was supposed to be a peaceful weekend getaway. Just a simple walk down the gravel road with my cousin, heading up to our family's old cabin tucked deep in the mountains. The sun was setting behind the trees, birds were chirping, and the only thing on our minds was starting a fire and grilling some burgers. But before we even got past the mailbox, we saw her arms crossed, lips tight, eyes locked on us like we'd just walked into Area 51. You guessed it, HOA Karen. Now, this isn't the first time she's been a little territorial. She's made it her mission to patrol every inch of the neighborhood like it's a gated community, even though it's not. My family's owned that cabin for years, long before she moved in, but still, there she was, storming down her driveway, in flip-flops and a Bluetooth headset, demanding to know what we were doing trespassing. We tried to explain, calmly, but before we could get 2 words in, she was already on the phone. Not with the HOA. She called the cops at that point. We just stood there, kind of stunned. I mean, who calls the police on people walking to their own cabin? But it was what happened next that took this from frustrating to downright unbelievable. Less than 10 minutes later, a cruiser pulls up. But when the door opens, it's not just any officer stepping out. It's the police chief. And not only does he know exactly who we are, he also happens to be holding a pair of grilling tongs. From there, everything flipped. Fast. But I'll tell you this, the look on Karen's face when she realized who she just called the cops on. Priceless. Stick around, because what happened next not only shut down the drama, but turned into one of the most unexpected cookouts I've ever been part of. Now, here's the thing about small mountain towns. Everybody knows everybody. And in our case, the police chief, Chief Reynolds, has been a longtime family friend. Grew up with my dad, went fishing with my uncle, even helped build the deck on our cabin back in the day. So when he stepped out of the cruiser, still wearing his backyard apron and holding a pair of barbecue tongs in one hand, I already knew this was going to be awkward, but not for us. Karen, on the other hand, didn't have a clue. She marched straight up to him, all fired up, waving her phone and pointing at us like we'd just crawled out of the woods with bad intentions. She kept saying things like, "They don't belong here, and this is private property." And even threw in a classic, "They were acting suspicious." Meanwhile, Chief Reynolds just looked at her, then looked at us, then looked back down at the tongs in his hand like he was wondering if he should have just stayed by the grill. Now, I should probably explain, this isn't the first time Karen's caused a scene in the neighborhood. She moved in about a year ago after her company went remote. Fancy city SUV, always on speakerphone, always filing some kind of complaint. I heard she once tried to get a tree removed because it leaned funny. So when she took it upon herself to police the entire gravel road that technically isn't even part of the HOA's jurisdiction, no one was shocked. But calling the actual police on 2 people walking to a cabin with backpacks and a bag of charcoal, that was new. Chief Reynolds stayed calm. Canis Leon just kept asking her to explain what exactly she thought was going on. But the whole time, he never took his eyes off me or my cousin. There was something in his face, like he already knew there was more going on here. Like maybe this wasn't just about Karen being nosy. And right when I thought he was going to defuse the whole thing, he suddenly turned serious and said, "You boys still got that old key on you." That's when things started to feel ... different. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the old brass key. It was worn and a little bent, the same one we've always used for the cabin since I was a kid. I held it up, confused, and nodded. "Yeah. Why?" Chief Reynolds didn't answer right away. He just gave me a look, part concern, part something else. Then he turned to Karen, who was still standing there with her arms crossed, like she was waiting for him to start arresting people. "Ma'am," he said, calm but firm, "I know this property. And I know these boys. You're going to need to step back for a moment." That only fired her up more. "I am the HOA chair," she snapped, like that gave her power over the whole mountain, and I'm just trying to keep this neighborhood safe. You can't just let strangers walk around like this. What if they're squatting or worse? Before Chief could respond, my cousin leaned over and whispered, "Did you hear what he said about the key?" I nodded, still trying to figure it out. The keys just for the front door? What could that have to do with any of this? But that's when a thought hit me. A memory, actually. Something my grandpa once mentioned. That the key didn't just open the cabinet, open the cellar too. A cellar I hadn't seen in over a decade. The old one, out back, hidden beneath some ivy and half buried in dirt. Grandpa used to joke that it held old family secrets, but I always thought he was just being dramatic. Now I wasn't so sure. Karen kept pacing nearby, muttering things under her breath about suspicious behavior and legal consequences. But Chief Reynolds wasn't paying attention to her anymore. He motioned for us to follow him down the road toward the cabin. No explanation, just a quiet, serious walk under the fading light. Something about his silence made the whole situation feel heavier. This wasn't just another HOA misunderstanding. And as we approached the trail that led off the road, one that hadn't been used in years, I realized whatever was waiting down there wasn't just about a key or a cabin. It was about something buried, something someone didn't want found. The gravel crunched under our boots as we followed Chief Reynolds off the main road and into the woods. Karen stood frozen on the driveway, phone still in hand, but something told me even she knew not to follow us now. The deeper we walked, the quieter everything got. No more birds. No breeze. Just the sound of our footsteps and the faint creak of trees swaying overhead. We curved past the edge of the old fence line, where the land dips just before the creek, and that's when I saw it, the cellar door, half covered in moss and fallen leaves, just like I remembered. I hadn't been back here since I was 12. Even then, Grandpa always told us to stay away. Said it wasn't safe. Said it was for grown folks. Back then, we thought maybe it was just an old storm shelter or storage space. But the way the chief was looking at it now, this wasn't just about safety. This was something else entirely. He stopped and turned to us. "Listen," he said, voice low. "I need you boys to be straight with me. Has anyone been up here lately? Anyone messing with the place?" I shook my head. "Just us. We come up once or twice a year, but we usually stay near the fire pit. No one's been down here." He nodded slowly, but didn't look convinced. Then he pulled out a small flashlight and pointed it at the hinges of the cellar door. Fresh scratches, like someone had tried to force it open recently. That's when I noticed something else, faint boot print in the mud, too large to be either of ours, and definitely not from Karen's sandals. Someone else had been here, and not long ago. Chief Reynolds stood in front of the cellar, breathing heavy. He looked at the key still in my hand, then back at the door. "If what I think is in there, this goes way past HOA drama," he muttered. "This goes back to the fire, the one no one ever talks about." And right then, a twig snapped in the woods behind us. We weren't alone. All three of us froze. That sharp snap in the woods wasn't an animal, it was deliberate. Like someone stepping on a branch without trying too hard to be quiet. Chief Reynolds clicked off his flashlight and signaled for us to stay low. I crouched behind a tree trunk, my cousin barely breathing beside me. The key felt cold and heavy in my palm now. That cellar door, the scratches, the boot print, none of it was random. Someone else had been here, and odds were they still were. For a moment, everything went still again. Then, just behind the brush line near the cabin's side, we caught a flash of movement. A dark figure, quick, low to the ground, like they knew the land. Chief Reynolds stepped forward just enough to call out, "This is private property. Come out now and identify yourself." Nothing, just silence. seconds, not even a breeze. Then suddenly, the figure bolted away from us, back up toward the main trail. The chief took off after them, fast for a guy his age, and my cousin didn't even hesitate to follow. I was 2 steps behind, my mind racing. Who was that? Why were they near the cabin? And what did it have to do with the fire he mentioned? We broke out of the woods near the back of Karen's property, but there was no sign of anyone. Just shadows and pine needles. Chief Reynolds stopped at the edge of her fence, staring up toward her porch light. "That path back there," he muttered. "It's been cleared recently. Someone's been coming through here regularly." My cousin looked over. "You think it's Karen?" The chief didn't answer, but his jaw tightened. Then, as we turned to head back, I noticed something in the dirt near her shed up buried. Metal box, barely visible, like it had been dug up and placed back in a hurry. I pointed. "That new." Chief knelt down, brushing away the loose soil. The lock was broken, the lid slightly ajar. Inside, a burned photo. And half a map. That's when the chief stood up, eyes sharp. "I need to know everything your grandfather told you, because this isn't just about property lines anymore." I stared down at the burned photo, the edges curled and blackened. But the faces were still clear: my grandfather, Chief Reynolds, and a third man I didn't recognize. All